Hi, everyone. I am Site News Editor-in-Chief Russell Hickson, and I want to formally welcome you to the Digging In podcast, where we dig into the week's biggest construction headlines and offer our insights. And before we get into the headlines, I want to tell you about the Site Service Awards. Behind every build, there's countless skill sets. That's trades, marketers, managers, tech leads, HR pros, designers, and more. And they often don't get their chance in the spotlight, and that's why the team here at Site News has officially launched the Site Service Awards to celebrate the full spectrum of talent that keeps Canada's construction industry strong. So right now, if you know someone who fits the bill, head over to siteserviceawards.com to nominate today. There's a wide range of roles that we want to highlight. There's no age limit. There's very few restrictions. So we want this to capture everyone that might have been overlooked by previous awards programs. All right, I think we're ready to get into our headlines. First story will be the federal budget. It's being rescheduled around builders. After that, we're going to dig into Alberta's next big pipeline push. And then after that, it's back to the drawing board for the Vancouver Art Gallery. They've picked some new design partners. And rounding out our headlines, builders are rallying to defend Ontario's Skills Development Fund after a major scandal. And guess what? If you stick around all the way to the end, you get to check out our fun bonus story. Before this Canadian project is built for real, it's being built brick by brick in Lego, and I'm going to tell you which project it is. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up, the federal government has announced that it is moving to a fall budget cycle instead of the traditional spring budget cycle. So now future budgets are going to be delivered in November instead of the spring. So here's what Finance Minister François Philip Champagne said, quote, "By moving to a fall budget cycle and introducing a new capital budgeting framework, we're making better timed and more transparent decisions. This is how we'll deliver generational investments." These capital investments include government-funded infrastructure projects, housing, and other physical assets. And so officials say that delivering the budget in the fall gives businesses and construction organizations more lead time to plan projects ahead of the spring construction season. Obviously Canada is a very large nation, and we have some pretty extreme weather, and some activities are very weather dependent. So this is going to ostensibly help the construction sector. And they say transparency in the new framework is intended to help MPs and stakeholders better oversee planned spending on infrastructure and capital projects. I think it's very interesting and maybe even indicative of the government's mindset right now that they say that they're planning their budget cycle around the construction process. I mean, maybe this means that construction and infrastructure and some of these large, quote, nation building projects are top of mind for Ottawa and officials. All right, next up, Alberta is gearing up for a major project push. They've announced that they're going to lead the application for a proposed crude oil pipeline to BC's northwest coast. This is supported by Enbridge, Trans Mountain, and South Bow, and a formal submission is expected in spring 2026. So that's coming up pretty quick. The province says it's committing right now $14 million to early planning processes, and they promise that there will be significant Indigenous engagement and potential co-ownership right from the outset. So Premier Danielle Smith and the Energy Minister Brian Jean say the project is critical to Canada's energy future and aiming to expand export capacity to Asia and bolster the country's position as a global energy leader. I mean, I think obviously with our new relationship with the United States, I guess that's kind of an understatement. I think a lot of Canadians have warmed to the idea of more pipelines and more energy infrastructure, whereas years ago, I think people might have had a lot more pushback, but they are starting to see some of the realities of not having those alternatives and some of that energy independence. The province has formed a technical advisory group, and it's supported by those pipeline companies that I mentioned earlier. And here's what Danielle Smith had to say, quote, "This project application is about more than a pipeline. It's about unlocking Canada's full economic potential. By doing this the right way from day one with Indigenous partners and industry expertise, we will deliver a proposal that proves this project is undeniably in the national interest, end quote. So it looks like she's really trying to pitch this as not just something that's going to benefit Albertans, but it's going to benefit all of Canadians. All right, let me paint you a picture of our next story. The Vancouver Art Gallery has selected Formline Architecture plus Urbanism and KPMB Architects to design its new homes at Larwill Park, making it the city's largest cultural infrastructure project in over 30 years. This is pretty interesting because I'm getting some deja vu. This happened before. So this follows a previously stalled attempt with Herzog and de Meuron that began in 2014, so 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. And the goal at that time was to double exhibition space to accommodate a growing collection and also increase attendance. So what happened? We've heard about plans for a new Vancouver Art Gallery for a long time. Well, like most of the answers to life's big questions, the root of it is money. So initially estimated at about $400 million, the project's budget skyrocketed to over $600 million, and that prompted the art gallery to halt construction in August 2024, and that was after they broke ground. And unfortunately, the museum had already invested $60 million into the project, but I mean, hindsight is 2020, and I think this is a great lesson in life: is when do you quit? When do you kind of go back to the drawing board, or do you keep sinking money into something that you don't think is going to be a good plan? So for now, the site of the art gallery's future building is being repaved and will once again become a parking lot. But the city says that's just a temporary measure, so we'll see if this project can get off the ground on the second go. So rounding out the week's top headlines is Ontario's Skills Development Fund drama. So Ontario's $2.5 billion Skills Development Fund, it came under a bunch of scrutiny last week after the Auditor General found that the selection process was, quote, not fair, transparent, or accountable. It seems like lower priority projects and things that maybe weren't in the best interest of what the project was, or what the development fund was supposed to be working towards, were getting funded. Maybe that was due to influence from lobbyists, or maybe they were friends with people involved in the program. But in any case, despite the criticism, the fund continues to receive really strong support from construction stakeholders, including contractors, unions, and training organizations that really rely on it. And they say it has delivered a great deal of benefit. So the Auditor General said that 549 lower-rated applications received $742 million. But the Ministry of Labor maintained that these interventions were made to meet government priorities, such as increasing skilled trades participation and supporting workers with disabilities. The fund has enabled targeted industry-led training programs that support workforce development, including housing, hospital, and transit projects. So let's look at some of the projects, at least in our industry, that have been funded by this fund. So the Ontario General Contractors Association's Pathways to ICI, the Construction Labour Association of Canada's Construction Boot Camp and Supervisor Micro Certification Program, and also you have training programs from the Progressive Contractors Association, LIUNA, other unions, and the list could go on. And so while this is getting a ton of bad press, I think the industry is trying to remind government officials and the public that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there's some issues, let's fix them. But it's a great fund that the industry has gotten a lot of great mileage out of. And finally, thank you so much for sticking around to the end. We have the bonus story for you. So this might be the funnest way to prepare for a major construction project. I've heard of building BIM models, of having early contractor involvement meetings, but in Halifax, they are building it brick by brick out of Lego. That's right, kids and adults alike now can explore Halifax's future emergency department brick by brick, thanks to a gigantic Lego model that's on display right now at IWK Health. So the health center in Halifax unveiled the Lego model of this new emergency department, and that is the real emergency department is set to open in 2027. So the award-winning Lego artist Sean McLeod is behind this, and he's from a company called Hold Fast Bricks, and they designed and built the model using 25,000 bricks, and it took more than 400 hours. So McLeod He's no stranger to this kind of work. He's previously created Lego models of maritime icons such as the Blue Nose, that famous ship, Pier 21, the Harbor Hopper, and the Halifax Town Clock. And so this project started as an idea about 2 years ago, and assembly started about a year ago. Officials say that this model is to entertain children visiting the hospital while giving a preview of the new emergency department. I think this is a super fun way to showcase some of the construction projects happening in a city, get kids interested in the built environment, and just have fun. Not everything has to be so serious. I remember growing up with a big tub of bricks, Lego bricks, that me and my brothers would pour out and go through, and we would build all sorts of cool and fun things. And I think Legos are a great way to get people, interested in construction and how things fit together and how to build. So yeah, hopefully there's more brick projects on the way, and maybe drop a comment on my LinkedIn and tell me what project you think should get the Lego brick treatment. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. And why don't you give us a rating and tell us how we're doing? Give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so other people can help find Digging In and get their construction headlines so they can be better prepared for their roles. All right, have a good one.